I spent a long time attempting to tell people about my experience, only to be met with incredulity and cynicism. I advise everyone to tell anyone they know who's been through such an event about the existence of support and study groups for survivors. I had a heart catheterization on Friday, March 17, 2006, to determine an abnormal stress test. I was also diagnosed with arterial fibrillation, but the results of the test were required before I could be treated. Unfortunately, the cardiac catheterization found a blockage on the left side of the heart, requiring open heart surgery. For the two blockages, two arteries might be exchanged. While my wife was terrified, the doctors thought it was a regular procedure. However, due to the severity of the blockage, or widow's heart, we were informed that I would be forced to stay in the hospital and the operation would take place on Monday morning, March 20, 2006. We were greeted by work friends and colleagues the night before the operation. Everyone was assuring me that everything would be fine and that this was a routine procedure. We were even admitted to Kansas Heart Hospital in Wichita, Kansas. At first, I was unconcerned about the procedure. That is until the evening of March 19, 2006. Everyone had gone that night, and my family had planned to return the next morning. The hospital staff performed their normal responsibilities and installed an IV in preparation for the procedure, as well as the necessary testing and preparations. I didn't get much sleep, so I wandered about the hospital with my IV bag. I was in a short corridor with an exit door and had no idea what was going to happen. The large two-exit doors swung open. Outside, an ambulance service vehicle and its driver were approaching. I turned back, still standing, to see a rolling hospital bed being rolled down the hallway towards the exit with a body bag attached to a deceased patient. My reality set in. I had no one to talk to, and my carefree attitude was replaced by fear. The hospital staff put me to sleep with a sedative. The morning arrived. It was Monday, March 20, 2006, 7 a.m., and it was time for surgery. I recall being wheeled away with my wife by my side, and the personnel got me set to go. I was wheeled into the surgery room, and the lights were turned off. After I came to in the afternoon, I was told that the operation went well. Because it was an open heart procedure, the surgeons bypassed two arteries on the left side and performed a mains treatment to treat the arterial fibrillation disease. My clinical data showed that my body vitals were normal following the operation on March 20, 2006, and that arterial fibrillation was still present due to the erratic heartbeats. The objective was to recover from surgery and then consider future treatment options. I'll say it now. What happened on March 22, 2006 was an NDE, and it can be distinguished from a typical occurrence due to medication or hallucinations from such a serious disease and therapy. I can tell the difference because of my own experiences. I have numerous hospital anecdotes of how I was handled, attended to or not, and medicated while in a coma. I did lose track of time after going into a coma. The first day of my operation was coming to an end, and people were departing for the day. Depending on the patient's health, the hospital timed limited visitor visits in the intensive care unit. I ran into problems on the first evening following the operation. I had respiratory failure during the night. I recovered the next day and was removed off the machine early. My progress was hit or miss over the next 2 days. Things were not going as planned. I was questioned whether I had internal bleeding or if I had an illness that was causing my breathing difficulties. The doctors were perplexed and worried. The doctors continued treatments and testing to figure out what was wrong. The date had changed to March 22, 2006. The day went on with lower vitals. I experienced respiratory failure once more. I remember feeling as if I were drowning, heavy in the chest, weak breaths, my lungs were flat, I was struggling for air, and I was becoming dead. I was requesting assistance with my mind. I desired the ventilator's magical sound. While in operation, the ventilator plays various tunes. I recall the workers pouring in and scrambling all over the place. The room was dark. The lights were turned on bright. It was cold, and the curtains were drawn around the bed. 4 IV poles with backs were placed on my bed. Many physicians and nurses were keeping an eye on me. The sound of the machine's tones. I'm breathing again. With the help of extra blankets, the physicians and caregivers got me situated and comfortable. The two nurses stared out the observation window for hours, not moving their gaze. My vitals and circumstances worsened as I remained on the ventilator. Something wasn't right. Doctors were perplexed. They were arguing with each other. My wife was in a frenzy, praying nonstop. My body was shutting down due to renal failure. It was difficult for my family to watch me fail. My prospects of survival were rapidly dwindling. The doctors were at a loss as to what was wrong. They warned my wife late that day to call in immediate family since I might not make it through the night. During this period of depression, I witnessed the oddest occurrence I can recall. It was unlike anything I'd ever encountered during a hospital visit, dream, or hallucination. I'm not sure how this happened, but I knew I was in big trouble. Outside of my body, I was in spirit. I was standing outside the hospital's immediate care room corridor. My colleague was on his way down to see me. He came to a halt right outside the emergency care doors to chat with someone. I was looking down at him. I looked about and noticed the photos on the wall. The one of the rural setting was one I had noticed on my last tour around the hospital corridors when I was healthy. He had a solemn expression on his face. He made a no motion with his head. I knew I wasn't going to make it. I was then in a dark meeting room with doctors seated around me. One of them was standing and presiding over the others with charts and information on my situation. I attempted to scream, "Poison!" but it didn't work. I was terrified and felt like I was going to die. My brief interaction went on. I had the impression that I was underground. I noticed a statue of the thinker for some reason, and suddenly it was dark, hot, really hot. The surroundings were rocky and dusty, like an underground canyon, and I was carried below as the heat increased. I went black after that. From there, I awoke to a dazzling light. The sun's light. As I already stated, it was blindingly bright. I turned and gazed down to see mountains covered in trees and a valley with a beautiful river flowing through it. As I turned around, I noticed the river running into the ocean, undisturbed by mankind. There are no bridges, people, or utilities here. Just sheer beauty. I was alive. My night came to an end at the hospital. I made it through the darkest hours. I had my walk with God in my head. My wife's prayers were fulfilled, and I was resurrected. Medical tests were performed. Medications were altered, and a procedure was performed to confirm that no internal bleeding occurred. The doctors were still shocked and perplexed, but they were relieved to discover that I had changed my mind. The physicians had put me in a coma, and I had been on a ventilator for about 20 days, and had been in the hospital for about 30 days, 24 in the intensive care unit. I know what it's like to be able to breathe again. Nothing beats that first breath of life, even if the air in the hospital smells delicious, chilly, refreshing, and bright. I'm still alive. I remember waking up after getting off the machine and asking my wife, "Well, how did it go?" in reference to the operation. "Honey, you've been here 20 days, she said after a brief pause. I fixed my gaze on her. My thoughts raced with everything I had witnessed, as well as all the days that had passed during that period. I talked to her. This had to come from on high. She stated that she'd been hoping for this miracle every day. I have dedicated my life to Christ since that day. My life has also changed. My life is filled with giving, caring, and compassion. I believe He has touched me and has physically blessed me with life. I've been given a gift, one that only those who've been touched in some manner would understand. His presence is so present in me that I can feel Him. I can sense and see someone's despair, happiness, and grief just looking at them. While this is a wonderful gift, I've paid a lot for my mistakes in the past. I've come to declare His grace to all of humanity. The irony is that he's always around, just waiting for you to accept him.